All right, folks, welcome to candidate work group session number 2 for the month of April. My name is Nick Bates. I serve as an assistant director for Thurman Center Networks at the Howard Thurman Center for Common Ground at Boston University here in Boston, Massachusetts. And I'm also a co-chair for the candidate subgroup with the Placement Exchange. And I'll let Christian introduce himself.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, daytime, wherever you are located. My name is Christian Raphael Suero, he, him, his pronouns. I am served with my amazing partner, Nick Bates, as a co-chair for TP's candidate development. And I work full-time at George Mason University as an assistant director for staff development, engagement, and onboarding. That means I help professionals with their trainings, their experience, and help them be great employees.
All right, so our second candidate sort of roundtable for the month of April, we wanted to stay firm in our commitment to you all to saying that TPE is 365 and we are continuing these initiatives beyond the virtual on-site event that happened in March. Wow, March seems so long ago, but it was just last month. So today we want to talk about leveraging your LinkedIn. We had a session prior to TPE virtual speaking about using LinkedIn and other e-portfolio type of websites or platforms, and LinkedIn was one of the things we mentioned. And we noticed there were a significant amount of people who had joined us with that specific session who said, hey, I don't really use LinkedIn. It's not my social network platform of choice. I don't really understand it. I don't really see its value for the career field of choice in higher education. And Christian and I both kind of just disagree. For starters, we both actually really like LinkedIn and we both use it pretty actively for our careers and also for the things and initiatives that we do with our careers. And so we wanted to cover LinkedIn from the standpoint, if you were someone who uses it sparingly or just hasn't try to maximize the opportunity of using LinkedIn. And so that's where we're going today with our session. And I'll kick us off and talk about why you should use LinkedIn, why it can be useful, and all the things of that such as well. Feel free to use the chat if you have any comments or questions as we are going on, as we continue through our session. And keep in mind that while we do have about 45 minutes to an hour reserved, that we may not use the entire time, and we'll also have time for additional questions. And we also want to make space for any dialogue that anybody wants to have. With all of those things being said, last thing I'll say is that this session, once again, is being recorded and will be placed on our YouTube channel. You can find us on the Placement Exchange on YouTube to see any prior sessions that Christian and I have participated in, but also the entire TPE committee as well for this and past academic years. So to get into it, why use LinkedIn? So I have really sort of 4 main core reasons why I think you should invest in and or use LinkedIn. For me, it's about networking, job searching, trend tracking, and evaluating industry value. So those are my real 4 core reasons for using and investing into LinkedIn. As you all know, LinkedIn is a social media platform that is primarily used for your professional branding, right? Your professional social media of choice. However, LinkedIn over time has evolved into this really robust and great platform sharing that allows you to self-publish, right? If you are a thought leader or attempting to be a thought leader in your industry, it allows you to self-publish. It also allows you to use it as a primary job recruiting or job seeking tool. It has also evolved as a place where you can also advance your professional development by taking online courses as well. So that's sort of its evolution over time as you see the company adding more and more things. But initially, it was a place that you went to network online via social media professionally. So, all the other social media channels have always existed: Facebook, Twitter, et cetera, before those things. There were MySpace, and before that, there was something else, I believe AOL chat or whatever you want to call it. There was always something else before, but LinkedIn was designated as sort of the professional place of choice. Initially, personally, from my own perspective, as a young professional in the field, fresh out of grad school, I hadn't really invested Still have my AOL email address too. Me too. And I'll reveal something for y'all. My email address was smooth1@aol.com. It was hilarious. But over time, LinkedIn has been this opportunity for me personally to use this site as a way to brand myself and also engage with my field and other fields more broadly. As a young graduate student, I just thought, like, do I really need another social media account? Twitter is the thing right now, student affairs, all of the essay chat, the essay grad chat, all of these particular chat-based hosted platforms were much more accessible and available for me. So I just didn't feel a need to invest in LinkedIn. And it wasn't really until the last 3 years that I started to invest in LinkedIn when I was searching for a new role to make my move to Boston. I was looking for a way to connect with professionals, but I was looking for something for me to be able to track the industry. And so I'll go with my first point is, as I said, networking. Some people look at networking as you just got to sign up and go to NASPA and go to sessions, and then you come home and maybe you go to a couple of receptions. And networking can be a little bit more than that. It should be, to me, the way that you engage either people in the field or the way that you engage the field at large. And what I mean by that is that it should be a place where you keep up with the professionals um, that you meet at different conferences or through different partnerships or different committees that you're on within the field. And then it also should be a way that you track, that you're paying attention to the industry, you're engaging with the latest news trends, you're engaging with the latest scholarship, you're engaging those who write the scholarship. And so for my networking piece, those are the two pieces that I like to pay attention to. And those are the two main ways that I use it as related to networking. For job searching, this can be a helpful tool for you to look at. And we'll do some sort of run throughs, and Christian will pull up his own LinkedIn and share, and we'll do some sort of run throughs of things that we use and or see on LinkedIn. But for the purpose of job searching, you can use LinkedIn as a way to see what other salaries are for other industries. Sometimes you're trying to figure out, I want to move to a different region. What are some of the salaries that people have in that region, so I can understand a little bit about cost of living and how I can afford to live in that place, or what do I need to afford living in that place, whether it be food, shelter, etc. Whether you have the most suitable of your needs, such as your haircut or a hair salon or a place that you go to for your dry cleaning, you can kind of see what the cost of living is based on positions that people have in different areas. And LinkedIn is a powerful tool for that. But it's also a great tool if you are searching in a different region, in a very targeted region. You can target your alerts in that way to make sure you can do such a thing as well. And so it can be a primary job search tool as well if you want it to be. But that's just, so far two of my four core, foundational reasons as to using LinkedIn. The third piece that I'll add is trend tracking. And so latest news stories, latest initiatives that you may be invested in. So if you are a professional who works in, let's say, multicultural affairs, and so LinkedIn is a way that I use to see how some of the people that I am tapped into their network, what they're doing in their centers across the country, whether it be if they have a specific initiatives that they're hanging on to, do they have a scholar in residence, do they have a program, a student cohort-based program that they're using to teach students different skills that will open up and make them more culturally sensitive. There's all of these different platforms and ways you can use LinkedIn to see those different things. And so for me, I say trend tracking is important, but also if you're like me right now, I'm paying attention to how every college is dealing with whether or not they want to mandate vaccinations for the fall semester as people are continuing to open up and prepare for fall. So that's just one of the trends that I have an alert for that I'm particularly paying attention to and I'm tracking. My fourth and last piece is evaluating your industry value. And so at some point, maybe not now, maybe later, but many of the folks that have joined us on this particular meeting, you are searching, right? You're looking to relocate. And one of the things that can be difficult is as you are searching, you're looking to find a new position or you're looking to find your first position within student affairs. It's trying to figure out, how do you value yourself? Right? When it's time to negotiate your salary or to receive said salary from a job offer, you're really trying to figure out, like, is that too low? How do I know what's too low? How do I know what I should ask for? And one of the ways that I've been able to do that is to be able to look at LinkedIn and look at comparable positions and look at how people are using it, using uh, their cost of living to evaluate what they do. People are using the amount of work that they do, the resources that they have within their institution. I've been using LinkedIn to evaluate the industry in such a way to see, what can be my value in this industry. But I've also been using LinkedIn to pay attention to nonprofit roles, to see what people are doing in nonprofit areas. And this is solely not just for evaluating my own place within the industry, but also evaluating what other strategies, what other platforms, what other initiatives that people are using, sometimes outside of our industry. We've talked about this in previous sessions before, for TPE, that, I don't just use strategies within my industry. I also find things from other industries that inspire me, that I find that can be suitable for the industry that I'm in. And so LinkedIn for me can be useful in those four sort of core categories: networking, job searching, trend tracking, and evaluating your industry value. And we'll continue on with our next point.
Thank you so much, Nick. And, when we're talking, so Nick kind of talked about, the overall why you should use LinkedIn. And before I go in and talk about the ways you can engage, and before I share my screen, in the chat feature, if you're able to, I would love to hear from you all in the ways you currently engage in LinkedIn. And you can be completely honest. You can say, absolutely not, I don't use it at all. You can say, I'm using it every day. But I would love to hear from y'all as members in this space. How are you currently engaging with LinkedIn or not engaging with LinkedIn? So someone wrote, oh, they're coming in right now. Someone wrote, I have it, but I only log in every month or so. I still haven't updated for the job I started in March. Found someone to revamp my resume, but also will be using some of her coaching services, use it for professional development and taking online courses. Yes, yes, yes. I use it to stay connected with former colleagues, also see what jobs are available. Barely engaging, have it, trying to have it updated. I have my LinkedIn attached to my resume and have been following organizations I'm interested in applying to. All righty. Keep writing in the chat the ways you engage. And it's a spectrum, right? There are people who really don't engage in it at all. There are people who use it here or there, whether it be to catch up with colleagues, look at organizations. And then there are people who use it frequently, which I'm going to be similar to Nick. We will say in this session that we use LinkedIn actively and continuously. And so the reason I asked everyone to write in the chat how they engage with LinkedIn is to have a better sense of how to go around this conversation. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk a little bit about the buckets of why you should engage with LinkedIn. And then I'm going to not only just talk about it, but show you on LinkedIn how you can do some of the things that we're talking about. And so when you're thinking about LinkedIn, as Nick shared, what I will share is that there are three huge buckets why you as an individual can benefit from LinkedIn and why you should engage with LinkedIn. Social, as Nick shared already, it can help expand your networks. I will argue more times than not, it's not what we know that helps us get a job. It's sometimes who we know that can help us understand an organization, what they're looking for, do an informational interview, and help us get the foot in the door. It's the people that we can identify as colleagues or stay connected to colleagues, as someone shared, if we go to a new opportunity. But then also finding mentors and resources that can help you as a professional. As we know, professional development doesn't stop at when you get a job, it's 360 and continues on. Culturally, it's important to know what's happening in the field of higher education, but just as an employee, things that are coming on the news. And Don't get me wrong. I know there's a lot of platforms out there like Facebook, and we're also not sponsored by LinkedIn for anyone who's curious. There are several platforms out there that you, of course, can understand what is happening in the world. But what I really appreciate about LinkedIn, it's a space where culturally individuals can learn more about the workplace. And there's a lot happening in a workplace in any given day, but also in a year, a lot can happen. And so being able to culturally understand what is happening in the workplace, but then also finding other people who are talking about things you've maybe experienced or how to support other colleagues is very important. Someone talked about courses, and LinkedIn Learning, something I'm going to show you all as well. But there are a lot of things out there that are free that you can maximize. And one of those things is LinkedIn Learning. If your institution has it, that means you have access to all the courses they have. And so that is something I will show momentarily. And as Nick lastly shared, the last bucket, economically thinking about your next transition. I'm an opportunist, so I like to have my eyes open at everything. And so when LinkedIn is a great platform because there's opportunities for you to search for jobs that may not be on our job board site or in others like Higher Ed Jobs or Indeed. And so 3 buckets: social, cultural, and economic, why you should be engaging LinkedIn. And let's go and show you how the ways you can engage with it. So I'm going to share my screen right now. And if someone can write in the chat ++ once you're able to see what looks like a landing page, that would be great. ++, thank you, Nicole. So for those who have never used LinkedIn, or for those who shared, I'm only on there when I need to be, this will either look new, somewhat familiar, or very familiar. And so when you go onto LinkedIn, this is what is in theory your landing page. So it looks very similar to other platforms like Facebook or Twitter, where you have the section where you can write a post, you can add photos, videos, but then everything's on your feed. To the right, LinkedIn has articles about what's happening in the news. And then you'll also see suggested things people to follow. Here you'll have organizations that you're either a part of, here companies that you manage, and here the people who view your profile during this week, but then the views of your posts too. So they try to give some of that analytics as well. Remember the 3 things that I shared: social, cultural, and economic. So when we go to my network right here, what you'll often find is people who want to add you, may they be previous colleagues or people who are like, I don't know who you are, but you want to connect with me. You want me to be your mentor, or you're trying to sell me something. Either or, you're trying to be part of my network. And so you'll find those individuals here in your invitation. But what's also cool is that you'll also find events that are happening when you go to your network. Things that algorithms are real, systems understand what you're looking for sometimes. And so you'll see things that align with your search interests or within your network. I didn't share this when I introduced myself, but I do work part-time. I'm a director of coaching in a nonprofit in DC. And so LinkedIn, when I updated one of my jobs, it started then connecting me to people who also work in my organization. And so as we talked about social, expanding your network and understanding individuals who may support you, LinkedIn will start associating individuals to you based off what organizations you have already listed as employers or that you're a member or part of. And so this comes very useful when you saw someone speak and they're part of your organization. You're like, I don't remember their name. I feel like a horrible employee. You'll probably find them on LinkedIn if they have a LinkedIn profile. But as Nick and I shared, it's not sometimes what it's who that can open a door for you. So what your network tab is a great resource for you to engage with, to expand your network, but then also look up people who you haven't met before. I'll give one great example. They're gonna think that I'm just I always use them as the example. But Christine Cruz-Vergara, for example, is someone who is a vice president of Handshake. And I was actually connected to her by one of my dissertation chair, someone who was a dissertation chair on my dissertation. And went on LinkedIn, saw her profile. I was like, okay, someone referred me to them. Let me see what they're about. And I really started getting an understanding of who they were as a professional. You know what I did when I understood who they were as a person? And I said, wow, I can see my interests with their interests overlap. I click this button that said message. I'm not going to click it because it's going to show you our message, but it was an easy search of that individual in one click to start a connection with someone. So that's how, one, you find people by going to the network tab and accept invitations, look at events, but then also searching people. Let's talk a little bit about the money, which is economics. And so if you're curious and interested in searching for jobs through LinkedIn, it's a very easy process. The first thing I would always tell people is you can either click the jobs tab, and what you should also do is be very specific with what you're looking for. And one way of doing that is by going to your profile. So this is my profile. And here you'll see a section that says open to work. What you want to do is click this little pencil that's right here. And what it'll do, it'll give you the option to start being specific with what you're looking for. So here, job titles, things that I'm very interested in, career coaching, career consultant, onboarding specialist, department or head of training, etc. But then also geographical location, because as we know, there might be individuals who can go anywhere in the US or internationally for an opportunity, but then there might be some individuals who are geographically bound. And so you're able to put that as a restrictor here. And then what will automatically happen once you save all that great information is once you go to jobs, it'll start auto-populating things that relate to, one, your geographical location, but to the keywords that you wrote. And let's be honest, technology is a little finicky sometimes. So what also helps is when you just rewrite those things here. So, oops, I was going way too fast for that one. So here, I'm gonna write one thing that I'm interested in is, apologies, is professional development. I live in DC and I want to stay in DC, so District of Columbia. And then you'll start seeing all the things that are aligned with what I wrote in that search tab, but then also my geographical preference. And everything to the left are all the opportunities that align with all the filters I already put in. So what I showed in my profile, the keywords I'm using, and then all you have to do is click on an opportunity, look to your right, and you'll be able to see the description of the job post. Sometimes you can apply directly through LinkedIn when you click a button. Sometimes you get redirected. And so that's one way of how to engage economically with LinkedIn. But what I really enjoy, and this is the total academic in me, is the LinkedIn Learning. LinkedIn Learning is a way for individuals to take courses and learn about a plethora of topics. May that be everything from customer service to project management to onboarding, you name it. They probably have it here in LinkedIn Learning. I'm just gonna do communication. And there's 247 courses on communication with LinkedIn Learning. What I love about LinkedIn Learning right now is when it comes to professional development, I think it's okay to acknowledge that due to COVID-19, some offices have been not able to engage in conferences or webinars. And so really having to maximize what is available at your fingertips. And for me, since George Mason University pays as an institution for LinkedIn Learning, I get all these courses for free. And if I'm ever interested, I can take a full course and I can even vary it based on the level. So beginner content, intermediate, or advanced. So I highly encourage LinkedIn Learning. They also provide certificates at the end of programs. So that's something that's pretty cool too, to showcase that you've done a course in LinkedIn Learning. So in a brief nutshell, we talked about socially how you can engage with LinkedIn. And that was one, going to your network, adding people, searching people, connecting with individuals in the workplace, and even searching people who might have opportunities that you see yourself in. We talked about culturally how to maximize things like LinkedIn courses to better understand your skill sets and also use that to help with professional development. And then economically, searching for jobs, being an opportunist or not, being able to keep your eye open on what's out there. And it's as simple as just typing in what you're interested in and adding your geographical location if needed. And I want to pass it to Nick to see if there's anything else he wants to add or include.
No, thank you for using your particular LinkedIn as well, showing us a lot of great, really neat things. All right, so the next piece that we're going to get into is informational interviews slash networking. This is a really useful tool, specifically if you are in the search at this point in time, and if you are on the placement exchange committee. I'm sure at some point someone has reached out to you and said, hey, I want to have an informational interview to get to learn more about TPE or about job searching as we continue our term here. And so for me, I think informational interviews and networking, I again give another 4 sort of foundational key ways that I navigate this personally. And so I look at it in 4 quadrants: the job search, specific initiatives, gaining new skills, and career planning. And so I'll start with the first one, the job search. This is a great time to interview people informally, just to learn more about their story in student affairs, what skills or what ways that they map out of their careers. But also, if you're applying at a specific institution and you want to know more about the institutional culture, LinkedIn is also a place that you can use to message someone in that culture, at that institution that are immersed in that culture. It could be someone in the specific department that you're in. But I try to always go for someone that's in a department that is either like adjacent, that the departments may interface with, or someone who's just on a different side of the coin, just to get the gist of what it's like to be at that institution. What's the culture like? Is it an institution where processes, whichever one you choose or prefer, that they move faster than others, right? There's the old monolithic myth that public schools move much slower than private institutions. And so this is an opportunity to evaluate these different things as well. This is also your opportunity to reach out to professionals to see who are related to the field that you're in, and to be able to have an informational interview with them and say, hey, I'm looking to get into res life. Tell me more about your crisis management skills. Did you develop them solely at an ACUHO-I training? Did you develop them solely at a departmental training? Or did you have any sort of governmental training as well, right? This is an opportunity to ask those questions. This is an opportunity to ask, what does crisis management training look like for you as a res life professionals at your specific institution? For some folks, it looks like it's just responding to alcohol incidents or alcohol drug-related incidents. But for some folks, crisis response to their institution looks like a heavy mental health focus. That's what it was for me when I was working in res life, a heavy mental health focus. And so this is an opportunity to learn that. Specific initiatives, I think this is a great place to go if you are looking to start a new sort of initiative at your institution or in your department. And so since I started my career working with Black Male Initiatives, I get a lot of informational interview requests from folks who are either currently working with Black Male Initiatives or looking to start some sort of Black Male Initiative type of program on their campus. And related to those, I get a lot of informational interview requests for Black and brown men of color groups. And so this is a great place to hone that skills, to share resources, to share strategies, to sit and converse with people and learn more about the ways that they've engaged those different things. And so I say specific initiatives because that is very key in your career. You'll reach a point where there's a time for you to launch a new initiative, right? There's a time for you to finally create that peer cohort-based model program that you finally wanted, so people can learn more about conflict management, or so people can learn more about cultural sensitivity, right? And sometimes you may have a little bit of the content knowledge and understanding how to navigate those things, but building a program structure out is a little bit different than having the specific content knowledge. And so LinkedIn can be an excellent resource for reaching out to folks to see how did they build their models, right? Or what were the founding resources that they use to support their models. That's what I mean by specific initiatives. So it's really key and a great place to go to that. And again, like I mentioned earlier, Black Male Initiatives and men of color groups are some of the ones that I do most frequently, as well as masculinity studies. And so what that looks like to have programs centered on masculinity that leads into bystander intervention, et cetera, again, this is content knowledge that I've already have, but I've been able to improve by reaching out to people on LinkedIn and also seeing how they do it differently. And I think that's something that, we forget sometimes in our field, is that we think the work looks the same in every single region, and it really doesn't, right? The work at times can look different in specific regions. And so that's a great opportunity to learn, how is somebody doing it? How is somebody doing my job, but in Texas? How is somebody doing my job, but in California? Because it's going to look different for me in the northeastern area, in the New England area. So great opportunity to do that. Gaining new skills. For me, I'm always trying to improve specific skills. And so LinkedIn is a great place to do that via courses, like Christian said, but also reaching out to people that you maybe have seen that were they were the judges of the case study competition at a particular conference. And so you might be saying to yourself, well, I want to improve my skill in case study competition. I want to improve my skills in drafting case studies. Who could I reach out to? Sometimes it's someone you saw at a conference, and LinkedIn is a great place to platform to do such a thing as well. And I must add that I always say LinkedIn is a great place for this. And I saw it mentioned in the chat. Someone said, I use LinkedIn to instead of using emails, I use it as an alternative for emails because it helps me organize my networking emails way more. And so I want to add to that sentiment on why reaching out specifically through LinkedIn to people is that people are already on this platform expecting to get those types of requests versus your email, where at times you're receiving so many different things via email that it is hard to keep track. And you also don't know why people are reaching out specifically to you at times for specific questions or initiatives. But LinkedIn sort of disarms the recipient, right? They're expecting to get a question about XYZ thing in their career. And so this is a great place for you to do that. The last thing I'll say is career planning. So I'm of the mindset that I'm always looking at roles to evaluate my progress, to evaluate what skills that I need to incorporate within my toolkit. And so sometimes for me, that looks like looking at roles that I aspire to be in one day. That looks like looking at roles in another region, as I mentioned, to see how they're doing the work. That means looking at roles at different institutional types to see how they're managing the resources as they do that work. So career planning for me is a big piece that I use LinkedIn for, to reach out to folks, right, for the purposes of informational interviews and ask them, how are you navigating being the director of your center? Are you a director with staff, right? What type of staff do you have? Do you have full-time professionals as staff? Are you a director with a small center and it's just you and a GA? That looks a little bit different with a part-time employee. Are you a director and it's just you and an admin? That may look a little bit different supervising a unionized professional. So I look at it that way in navigating, what's a potential situation that I may be in as I plan out my career in the future, and how do I get there? If your desire is to be a university president, don't feel shy and think university presidents won't respond to you on LinkedIn as you're mapping out your career. They will. It's all about you reaching out and also, playing a little bit of a waiting game sometimes, but it's about a matter of you reaching out with a really direct request, I think, too. And that's the last piece I want to say in this section, is making sure that your requests are direct, that you're not leaving it up in the air, right? Don't message someone and just say, hi, how you doing? Like, do not do that, right? You need to message someone with a particular intended outcome. It's okay. I understand that may feel like a business transition, but again, we're talking about a professional networking platform. So in essence, there is an element of being a business transition, albeit you may not be trading some sort of material currency, but you are trading the sort of social currency with each other. And so be sure that you're messaging someone on LinkedIn for the purposes of an informational interview, that you are really clear and direct on what you're trying to get out of that exchange, so they understand and they know and they're able to respond accordingly. And I'll pass that on to Christian.
Yes, don't leave things unclear, because I'm sure many of us have gotten mixed signals or just not sure what people needed from us. And we're like, what am I supposed to do with this? Don't do that, someone else. I will also say that, sometimes with LinkedIn, there are people who may not respond, right? I think of I had a friend who would message recruiters, and when they told me they started doing that, I'm like, well, yeah, I don't necessarily think recruiters will always contact back to you via LinkedIn. They may and they may not. And so if you don't hear from someone, just know that that is okay if you don't hear back from someone. As we just shared earlier in the discussion, how often people use LinkedIn, there was a spectrum, right? There are people who use it all the time. There are people who don't even touch it. And so just keep that in mind, that all you can do is what you can control for. And if you are clear, if you're direct, if you are sharing why you want to meet with someone or speak with them, you've done your part. It's now on them to reach out back to you to reciprocate that, or check that LinkedIn once a month if that's what they're doing. We did have a question about different experiences and how to brand yourself on LinkedIn about that. And that's the next session's our last topics about branding. So I'm going to cover that just right now. Let me read this next question. I have a question about the list of experience on your profile. I have heard arguments your experience, you should list your experience through bullet points versus a narrative. Is this down to a personal preference, or can you all share any insight you have on this? Absolutely. So before I share my screen, the first thing I would say is I think to any social platform, it's really on the individual. And that sounds like the safe and gray answer, like, oh, it's on the individual, you can figure it out. But I really do think that platforms like Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, where people have brought their professional capital and leverage that to showcase who they are professionals, they all look a little bit different. For me, what I can share with my preference in terms of listing and I'll show this momentarily, my jobs is I do a bullet point style very similar to my resume. I do have a lot of other colleagues who write a paragraph about what they've done there. And I think that's just their own professional take on that. Nick, what do you think in terms of bullet point style or paragraph style on LinkedIn?
You caught me as I was typing in the chat, but I would say this depends on which industries are you engaging, right? And I want to be clear in understanding that some people are only engaging like student affairs, right? And then there are some people like Christian and I, to a degree, we're also engaging student affairs, but we're also engaging the nonprofit world, right? Pieces of my professional position at Boston University involves partnerships with external companies, and so we've partnered with different companies in the area, and so I'm engaging that industry, right? But I'm also engaging consulting industries as well, and so I'm asked to do some consulting work. But I also, dip my head into academia a little bit, as a former adjunct instructor, and so it really depends on which industries you're engaging. And if you're someone that is engaging a multitude of industries, I think you might want to go with something that's more clear cut, right? So I think I may choose bullet points because I'm engaging so many industries. I want people to clearly understand what it is that I do, so they clearly understand how to engage me. But I could be someone who is maybe the huge core piece of my position has to do with the creative mind, the creative brain, right? I could be a writer. And so therefore I may want to go with a more narrative based approach. And so I like this comment in the chat by one of our committee members. Shout out to Nakia for being faithful to the experience. But she mentioned that some people, she saw something new to her about projects I love with each experience. And so it's something that you can add in addition to something you were intrigued by, but it's an addition that this person may have been in the business/science sector. And that's a great perspective, right? It really does depend on how many industries you are engaging. But if you are someone who does not want to spend time figuring that out, I feel like it's safe to just go with the bullet points.
Yes, cosign. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and in this, what I want to do is talk about professional branding. I will ask everyone to do something in the chat before I go in depth. And so let me not share my screen just first. In the chat, for those who are able to type an answer, I want you to take a moment and think about what are 3 words that describe who you are as a professional. Just 3 words. They can even be hyphenated words if you want to use the hyphen. But in the chat, I would love for individuals to write 3 words that describe who they are as a professional. For those who are not able to engage with the chat feature, I'll just read to you what some people are writing. So one individual wrote, well, I wrote supportive, mobile, and development. Another individual wrote loyal, hardworking, reliable. Another individual wrote passionate, big picture oriented, a collaborator. Someone wrote organized, developmental, and activator. Someone else wrote storyteller, transformative, justice oriented. Another person wrote reliable, relatable, and organized. Yes, yes, yes. And I acknowledge and appreciate all the ones that are still coming in as well. And so the reason why I started off with that is like, what are the 3 words that come with who you are as a professional? Is because it's something as simple as that can help you identify how do you want to engage with your LinkedIn, but like start identifying what is your professional brand. And so using the example I gave in who am I as a professional, the words I wrote was supportive, development. Yes, sorry, question came in. Supportive, development, and supportive, mobile, and development. And so to give a little context about that, for me, I enjoyed this work, right? The work that we are in the space right now in terms of helping individuals through their transition. I'm also a firm believer that in the workplace, creating opportunities for mobility, right? And sometimes helping people navigate the workplace can help them become more mobile, may that be across situations and events or getting a promotion. And all that's rooted in development, where I believe that being able to share resources as well as have conversations, and when I mean have conversations, talk about the things that are fun to talk about, but then also the difficult conversations can help people develop as professionals and as people. And so when I had everyone think about those 3 words, I want you to think about how can I translate this to who I am as a professional in terms of my brand into a website. And it sounds either very simple or very hard. And let me share with you all my screen now. As you think about your brand, also think about where you want to go. I know for myself, no matter what work that I do in higher education, in the nonprofit sector, in the private sector, whatever sector, name it, it's going to be around careers, no matter what it is at the end of the day. And so this section we're talking about, how do you brand yourself on LinkedIn, is focusing on how do you translate those 3 words that you just shared, but then also the area and field you're interested into to speak to those things. And so here what you see is my my profile page, right? So if we're on Facebook and you looked me up, this is what you would see. Similar to LinkedIn, this is my profile. So this is what you see that when you click on my name and search for who I am. Here you have my title, pretty plain and simple. Some people, spice it up and do little different things here in terms of what they do. For me, I just say my role and that I'm a PhD candidate. You also have an about section. And so this is where you want to illustrate and showcase some of the things that we talked about in terms of what are you trying to engage in, but then also who are you as a professional? And for me, I wrote it in 1 sentence. Again, people have different styles and different formats, but for me, I was able to write what I cared about in 1 sentence, which was I'm focused on social economic equality, equity, as well as well-being factors that impact historically marginalized populations domestically in the workplace and in higher education systems. If you don't know who I am, or if you do know who I am, this totally speaks to who I am, because everything in terms of my dissertation topic and the work that I do speaks to mobility in the workplace or higher education. This is something that not many people utilize, which is very interesting, but the featured section. So when you see this section right here, you can showcase the work that you are doing. So this could be anything. This could be videos of you talking, doing a presentation. This could be your website that you have on the side. This could be projects, your business, you name it. All you have to do is go on the plus button and add your link and information there. So for context, for me, I do podcasting on the side about navigating the workplace. And so what I've done is, as my sole feature, I have here my podcast, where people can look at that as my spotlight. If you go to Nick's profile, Nick has a lot of things in there, from the discussions that he's held and as well as moderated around the Black male experience, and diversity, equity, inclusion. And so when you're looking at branding yourself on LinkedIn, think about some of those, whether they be webinars, discussions, presentations, your access to, or links and access to the things you have done that you want to highlight here, where someone can see you, because that is literally right under your headshot is featured. The first thing that you see is this thing right here, where it showcases what you've done. Nick, anything before I scroll down that you want to share about the featured section? Perfect. This is your dashboard. It just tells you analytics and statistics about like how many people have viewed your profile in the week. But here too is your activities too. So, showcasing what you're engaged in. And this is another form of how you can brand yourself, right? So part of branding is how you're engaging with a community or communities, right? May that be the topic, field of interest with an employer, or et cetera. So what I'm gonna do here is just click on one thing. I oftentimes once a week do a post about the workplace. And so here, I talk about making sure you check in on coworkers continuously, right? I think whenever there's an event that happens in the world, there's always a post about make sure you check in on coworkers right now. And for me, I was just adding to the narrative that you should always check in on your coworkers, regardless. Yes, when things do happen in the world, but also when things aren't happening in the world. And you can add hashtags and et cetera, and see people's reactions, whether they like it, dislike it, or et cetera. But the reason why I shared this with you all is because one of the branding words I talked about was mobile and development. And I shared, helping people navigate the workplace. This is one way how I'm branding myself, in terms of I'm trying to have an ongoing conversation or just share my knowledge about the workplace in this post. Here's where we got the questions about bullet points or paragraphs. For me, I'm a bullet point person. I literally copy and paste from my resume. What you'll see here is similar to your resume, your position, your organization, how long you've worked there, and then what you've done in that place. My education, volunteer experience, maximize this, right? Showcase what you've done for the field, whatever field you're in. And then what I really adore, and I know I'm trying to be mindful of time as we want to leave it open for questions, is your skills. And sometimes on resumes, you'll see a sections where it says skill, where people like include their skills and softwares. What I really enjoy about this is that you have people who can endorse you. Now it sounds like very political, like, oh, I'm being endorsed, being a great communicator. But oftentimes what people do is if they've worked with you, they'll give a comment or endorse you that, yes, this person is an effective communicator, or yes, this person has done qualitative research. And one thing I've seen people do often is like, for organizations they work for, or even within their current employer, have people endorse one another so they can showcase the different type of skills they have. Because it's hard for random people, when I say random, it's hard for people to sometimes see this and say, yeah, let me make sure I endorse Nick for qualitative research. And so people sometimes strategically plan like, hey, let's get on LinkedIn and let's endorse each other for our skills. And then accomplishments and interests too. So think about the thing I asked you all before I showed you my profile, which is, what are the 3 words that describe you as professional? Now, looking at your LinkedIn, how can you showcase that? And there's several different ways, as I illustrated in this session, of how you can illustrate that. One is showcasing the works that you're currently doing. Second is engaging in terms of posting or commenting things that align with your brand. But then lastly, think about things here like your positions and your volunteer experience and skills to showcase who you are as a professional. Nick, anything else that you want to add?
Nope, I think we covered it all. I want to make sure we have time for questions.
Oh, yeah.
All right, any other outline questions? I think there was a question. Yeah, there was a question on top of Christian's question that he read out loud about bullet points versus narrative. There's also a question about, if I have a diversified professional profile, how can I balance showcasing both aspects? And I think what Christian just mentioned is that featured section is a great opportunity to use that. I've posted YouTube links. I've posted places where I was quoted. I've posted places where I've done podcasts. I've posted some writing that I've done on various websites, all of those different things in the featured section as well. And then I also feel like that you should engage those industries and people in those industries as well, if you're balancing them both. And so sometimes it looks as simple as, seeing a post that Christian just mentioned, how he comments on the workplace every week. When you see folks who do things like that, make it a habit of commenting on their post every week. That's just a simple way that you can engage an individual within that field. If you see a good article from diverse education or anti-higher ed, making sure you post an article and some of your thoughts on said article weekly or monthly. Those are just different ways that you can balance showcasing both aspects. By adding your, I think the key to being a thought leader is to add thoughts to something, right? And to build your capacity to be able to add thoughts to that particular field of study or industry of note. And so that's one of the ways that I think you should balance that aspect related to both of those career interests that you may have. Other questions or things like that before we close? For the featured section, someone in the chat says, periodically check your featured links to make sure it's a permalink and the content is still there. That is absolutely true. You will have that issue where people take things down or change pages. I know that happens to me. Should we include activities and societies we were involved in during our education section, or should we include this at all in a different section? Christian, you want to tackle that question?
It was like you knew I was typing. Yeah, so Alexis, there's a section, and let me pull it up right now. I'm gonna share my screen real quick. There's a section on here that outlines volunteer experience, but if you want to add it, your associations and your societies here, I would recommend either the volunteer, if you volunteered for them, but you can also do like an interest as well. If you were like heavily involved in experience, I have seen individuals put that under the experience in general tab too. Like I know some people, even our own committee, that have wrote, chair for this, and it's on their experience. So I think it's whatever method you're trying to address, right? So if you're trying to highlight like employability skills, put it under experience. But if you're just trying to share that general volunteer and or general interest, then I would use one of those two sections.
Your other questions? Thank you all for joining us so far. Any other questions before we close? If you want to connect, Christian has posted his LinkedIn information. I meant to do that earlier. I forgot as well.
Consent to add your LinkedIn if you want me to.
Sure. Yeah. Go right ahead. Other thoughts as we close? Both of our LinkedIn profiles are there, so feel free to click in and add us, engage us. Please don't just add us to say you have another member of your network. Please engage us, ask us our thoughts on things, or ask us strategies or resources as well. Any other closing thoughts before we end this LinkedIn section for a while. And like I told you all from the beginning, why should you use LinkedIn? Networking is a great reason to use it. If you are searching for a new position, a great reason to use LinkedIn. Tracking trends, whether it be the trends of your industries, the trends of a particular disciplines. It can also be to track news sources, comments on news commentaries. And lastly, evaluating industry value, whether it be your value in the industry or what value looks like for a specific industry. Those are sort of the four core reasons that I mentioned in the beginning why we should use LinkedIn. If there are no further questions, Kristen and I will see you again for our webinars again in May, and you can find those through the TPE newsletter. Otherwise, you can view previous content on the Placement Exchange's YouTube channel. You'll find that by simply searching the Placement Exchange on YouTube. You can also find previous resources and events, webinars, etc., or upcoming things on the Placement Exchange's website, which is theplacementexchange.org. Otherwise, good afternoon. Have a good afternoon. Have a good evening. Have a good morning. Have a good whatever it is, wherever you are. And we look forward to seeing you all at the next event. Or we look forward to meeting you all through LinkedIn or other channels as well. And with that being said, we have a little saying that we say at BU, which is be well, everybody. Be well as best as you possibly can. Have a good one, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone. Know your worth and know your value.